We will now move to our first session of the day, the importance of your story and self-advocacy. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this important and interactive session. During this session, you'll have the opportunity to create and communicate your stories, and we hope to equip you with confidence to share your story, recognize your choices, and advocate for yourselves. We all know the importance of increasing awareness of colorectal cancer, as we're all in this audience affected by it. For this session, I'll be joined by Chana Cohen, Patient Support Specialist at Colorectal Cancer Canada. Chana, could you come on screen and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you here today?
Certainly. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chana, as Dominique said. First and foremost, I'm a mom of two very lovely daughters, aged 10 and 12. At the time of my diagnosis of stage 3 colon cancer, I was a 38-year-old full-time medical social worker with a 4 and a 6-year-old. No prior health issues, active and always focused on nutrition. Shock and bewilderment are understatements when I think back to how I felt the day that I was diagnosed. I knew I wasn't well, but this diagnosis baffled both myself and my doctors, who never even had the possibility of colorectal cancer on their radar, in spite of the very, very clear symptoms. This is the very reason why I've shifted my career to focus on colorectal cancer patient support and advocacy. I recently accepted a position with Colorectal Cancer Canada and have begun by creating virtual informational and psychosocial support groups in the hopes of empowering patients and their caregivers to ask questions, challenge outdated medical perceptions, and find their voice in a storm of powerlessness. We are continuously working on new ways to engage patients and caregivers to become active participants in their healthcare through education and emotional support. We currently have a group for Kingston, Ontario, and surrounding area colorectal cancer patients the last Monday of every month, as well as a national early age onset group the first Monday of every month. We're in the process of developing information sessions for newly diagnosed patients, the dates and the times to be determined. So if you're interested in receiving individual or group peer support, please reach out to me at chanac@colorectalcancercanada.com.
Thank you so much, Chana. So today we'll look at how we can tell our story. And Chana will help provide an example as we move through the session in order for all of us to get comfortable in telling and sharing, in recognizing our choices and understanding the perceived outcome of these choices to be more in control of how colorectal cancer is affecting us. Creating your own story around your personal experience with colorectal cancer is the best way not only to increase awareness and save lives within your community, but more importantly for each and every one of you to feel empowered about the actions that you can take for yourself and the conversation that you want and need to have in navigating with your own situation, the difficulties of dealing with colorectal cancer. Albeit like Chana just mentioned in her story, like the overwhelming emotions that come with having that diagnostic or having someone you love having it. So telling your own story is personal, and the outcome you can have with self-advocating is important to positively change colorectal cancer impact. If you are a patient at any stage of treatment, a family member, a caregiver, or a healthcare practitioner. So with the objective of this session in mind, I'd like to start by having you also use a bit the platform and use the chat. You can find the chat at the top right of your screen. So when you have located it, please, what I would ask you to do is enter one word, only one word. The one word that describes how you personally feel when you think of colorectal cancer. So write this single word for you on how you feel when you think of colorectal cancer. I repeat in the chat that you can find on the top right of your screen. I'm going to leave a little bit of time for people to start writing. So we're seeing some answers starting to come in. Sad family, strong mom. It's interesting. There's words of people. There's word of emotions. So fear, fight, fear, unknown, sadness. But there's also treatable, anxiety, sadness, survivor, stress. So many emotions that are connected to, again, the stressful event, but there's also positivity in those chat that we're seeing, Hannah, as I'm kind of seeing them rise in the chat. Living. So there's a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. It's overwhelming but treatable. So it goes back from those sentiment of being sad, being overwhelmed, to being treatable, and some positive words as well. So one of the words that seems to be prevalent in the chat, Hannah, on our audience goes with, like, again, that sadness, that challenge, that anxiety, the stress. So as a patient yourself, do you relate with this feeling when you think about colorectal cancer? What would be your word, Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, all these words are very relatable. It's amazing how 6 years later, all the emotions flood back when you start to talk about it and you engage with other patients and families. So 6 years post treatment, the word that comes to mind personally is prevention. This is where our lifestyle choices can really make a difference. In my case, there was no family history, seemingly healthy lifestyle, but I also never knew about the link between processed meats and colorectal cancers. I ate the same lean deli turkey sandwiches every time, several times a week through my entire high school attendance, 5 years. This was potentially a contributor, and I had no idea. I also spent my high school years focusing on my social life. I quit soccer, I quit ringette, very minimal physical activity, another big risk factor. Colorectal cancer is preventable. We can do our part by educating ourselves and others about risk factors and lifestyle choices, but also by making the conscious choice to advocate on our own behalf when we intuitively feel there's something wrong with our bodies. We make the choice to seek help, even if the fear of what will be discovered is ever present. Then, when we don't receive proper guidance from medical professionals, we again make the choice to push forward and seek a second opinion, having faith in our intuition and knowledge of our own body.
Thank you so much for sharing. As you were saying that, there's other chat coming up, and there was one that kind of was saying, Ian was saying, not me. So a bit connected to what you were saying earlier. And as I'm listening to your story, Hannah, and thank you for sharing so candidly, is in any adversity we face, if we can have some control and be part of the decision, kind of one step at a time, we can feel a bit more empowered no matter what choice we make. And even the size of these choices, you're talking about sandwiches and when you were in high school, and I think we can all relate to those events, and then looking in hindsight, what different choices could have we made? So we feel a bit more in control and empowered when we do. So obviously, when we think about colorectal cancer, as we saw, I hope everybody's seeing the chat, like it's continuing to also to roll, like there's cheated, there's not me, there's many things coming up. So there's many negative feeling. Many of you feel stressed, overwhelmed, cheated. Again, not the reality. And it's obviously natural and normal to react and feel like this. At the same time, understanding our emotion and feelings is critical in this journey, to be able to then express, I would say, and communicate about it, and be able to communicate our emotions and what we feel. So this is the ground to self-advocating and feeling a bit empowered, and the objective of what we're trying to discuss today in this session. So the good side is that we're all here today in this community, and we hope that you will make new connection throughout these 2 days and leverage these connection as one of the messages also we want to leave you with is you're not alone in this journey. So before we continue, maybe you're going to have the opportunity to go and break out and discuss in smaller group, but I just would like to describe a little bit more what we mean by self-advocacy. So maybe Chad, if you could just kind of give us a little bit the slide. So there's many definitions of self-advocacy, obviously, but here are things that again resonate with, I think, the journey of colorectal cancer, even if you're a patient, a family member, or caregiver. Self-advocacy is about learning how to speak up for yourself and take a stand for what you need and what you want. It's about making your own decision. We discussed that a little bit with Chana about your own life and taking a bit of the control of what you can. Learning how to get information so you can understand where do you get the information you need to be able to be part of the decision making and also what is of interest to you in this journey. Knowing your rights and your responsibilities. So what is your accountability in that journey? Finding out who will support you. I always say this is about who's your personal ad board, who can you call at 3 a.m. and you know they're going to be there for you, and you're going to need that support through that journey. So reaching out to others when you need help and friendship, like we were talking about adversity with Chana, and obviously, I don't know about yourself, but sometimes when I can share that when I face adversity, it's hard to reach out to friends just because I don't want to bother them. I don't want to be the non-positive person I'm usually am, and I think it's important to make sure that you have that surrounding around you. So learning about self-determination also to be able to be the warrior in this journey. So why is self-advocacy important? It's important so you can have the confidence to really tell and share your story, the knowledge and the information to recognize and make the choice that you want to make and you want to be part of making, to feel empowered and strong. So this is just a tool that we would like to leave you with, and we encourage you to use it. We call this the self-advocacy tool, and it's about taking a bit of control when everything is overwhelming, like the tsunami of emotion. And it's about, so what I'd like you to do is just think about your own situation. It's all personal to everyone in the audience. So think about your own situation and think about what are the things in that situation that are out of control. You have no control over, that you cannot control, and try to get rid of them in your mind. And then focus on what could you do? What are some of the choices that you have? What are some of the things you could do in light of this situation? And try to go through the funnel like this. The third part is, what can you learn from it? What are some of the things that also can make you better out of this journey? And what are some of the learnings that you can carry on? And then the last point is about what are you going to be doing now? So it's a way of focusing on the action, focusing on the moment. And sometimes when you feel overwhelmed, using it to try to refocus on what you can control in this journey. So hopefully you're going to be finding this tool useful to sometimes just reflect. So now that we have a little bit reflected on what I call the mindset for self-advocacy using the funnel, let us build our story together, because self-advocacy is about taking action, as I just mentioned, and communicating about it. So in a few minutes, we will be putting you in breakout rooms, and I will explain how we will be doing this. But first, I'd like to ask you to get a pen or paper, or get something to write on, or get your iPhone to write on, and let us build your story as we go through this framework together. We'd like to do this exercise all together and have Chana help us in terms of sharing example. So think about and try to answer the following question that you have also on the screen. When you or someone you know was faced with colorectal cancer, what was your challenge? What were your choice? And what was the outcome of the perceived outcome? You may be new to colorectal cancer and still defining the challenge and maybe not having made some of the choices. So you all have a different situation. Adapt it to your own. But to help us do this, let us use Hannah's example to go through it. So Hannah, if I ask you this question, when you were faced with colorectal cancer, what was your challenge?
So, Dominique, my personal challenge was actually getting my colorectal cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, it took quite a while to get there because of my young age, as I mentioned prior. So it was really actually getting the diagnosis that was a big challenge for me.
And you had to do a lot of hoops, I guess, to get there.
Yeah, I did. I had to ask a lot of questions and seek a lot of opinions and advocate on my own behalf.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. And I don't know if it's possible, Chad, to have the slide also between Hannah and I. It would be good just as we go through that, because I'd like to make sure also that the audience can take the minute to write down their own challenge and see also the example of Hannah if possible. So again, we're going to give you a little bit of a time. What I would ask you to do is write down your challenge. This is, again, as we mentioned, personal and can vary widely. So as Hannah was saying, her challenge was getting her diagnostic at her early age or young age. What was your personal challenge, and what is your personal challenge? And make it relevant to yourselves and what you're experiencing. Write it down and answer the question. What was your challenge when you or someone you know faced colorectal cancer? So now, maybe Hannah, we can look at the second part of the self-advocacy story. When faced with colorectal cancer, what were the choices you made? Why did you make them? And what are some of the choices that you might have done or you might have to do? Obviously, again, it's all relative to where you are in your journey. But in your case, Hannah, if I ask you and I ask the audience to think about their own choices as you speak, what were the choices that you made and why did you make them?
So, very good question. And essentially, the choice that I made was, again, related to seeking a diagnosis. I knew that there was something very wrong. I had very, very severe symptoms. So at that point, when the doctor that I had been going back to many, many times, and he was just not going about any diagnostic, in a helpful way. What I did was I chose to move forward. I chose to listen to my body and to demand that I needed a second opinion. When I was told word for word, I just don't know what to do with you anymore. I basically said, somebody will, and let's find that person. So I believed in myself, and that's a really important part. I chose to force a second opinion, and that saved my life.
That's so powerful, Hannah, to share. Like, again, in believing in yourself, I love how you say that. So going back to building our story, we have the challenge that Hannah just shared in terms of getting colorectal cancer diagnostic. She chose to listen to her body and get a second opinion. So as we're continuing that, please take the time to write down what were the choices and decisions and why, and just a few points there as we continue. So now that we've looked at the challenge and the choices, let's continue and let's go to the third part of the self-advocacy story. When faced with colorectal cancer, what were the outcome or sometimes the perceived outcome because it's in the future? Think about it. Hannah, you shared again, what was your challenge getting diagnosed? You also shared the choice you made and why you made them. Getting a second opinion to get your diagnostic because you knew something was wrong. So if we continue with building your story, and I ask you, what was the outcome? Could you share with the audience and continue telling us your story?
So gratefully so, this is the outcome. I'm here to share it. But what happened, the outcome of my choice, of the choice that I made, was that I finally did get that second opinion. And that second opinion made all the difference. I was finally granted a colonoscopy and the proper medical attention.
Thank you. And it's interesting, Hannah, and that's a great outcome. But as you were speaking on the chat, I couldn't help myself but to see that you're not alone. You know, like when we say we're not alone, there was someone also that had exactly the same challenge of getting diagnosed. So that's part of probably many people that have some of the similar challenge, and the opportunity of being in a community like that is to be able to exchange, not feel alone, and be able to advocate for ourselves. So thank you again, Hannah, for sharing so candidly and so clearly. I think now we have kind of a construct. But if I look at your outcome, obviously, of getting that colonoscopy, when you finally got that colonoscopy and proper diagnostic, how did you feel?
So that's actually a really interesting question, Dominique, because you would, aside from the shock and bewilderment that I mentioned earlier, there was a sense of relief. And, I've heard this from other, especially young patients who've said, I just knew that there was something wrong. And for so long, I lived with that fear and that unknown that finally, when I did get a diagnosis and I knew that there was now like a path to follow, there was a sense of relief. Okay, so now what's the plan? So I definitely felt more in control, more empowered.
Yeah. So empowered, in control. So listening to you, it's interesting to see that the colonoscopy brought bad news, but it was a relief because you knew what you had. So these are kind of positive feeling, huh? Right?
Yes, I was able to take control a little bit more as opposed to feeling completely powerless and helpless.
Hmm. So to connect a little bit to what we're trying to achieve, by taking action and self-advocating, you were able to feel more in control, as you mentioned. So your challenge, the choice, and the outcome, use it to the audience, use it to build your self-advocacy story and frame for discussion. Now, I would ask everyone in the audience to just look at what you wrote down as we were speaking about your challenge, what you chose, and the outcome. You should all have noted them, and basically this can become the base for self-advocating. You can now use it to tell your story, a bit like a skeleton of your story that you can also vary depending on who you're telling it to, but also using a similar structure. Obviously, you're all a different moment. It's interesting to see that there's a lot of commonalities, but again, everybody's at a different moment in your journey with colorectal cancer. And you may be newly faced with colorectal cancer, not have the choices or even the perceived outcome yet. And this is perfectly fine and normal, but use it to think about them and to be proactive about what could be the choice that you have and that you can make to be a bit more in control. So now we'll get you into breakout rooms because we'd love to give you the opportunity to communicate your story. But before we do this, I would just like to remind everyone of some housekeeping rules for the breakouts. First of all, please mute yourself if you're not speaking to be able to listen to who's speaking. If you can, and as much as possible, leave your camera on during the breakout. It's like you're having a coffee with some community members that are going through the same journey. So if you can leave that camera open, be respectful. Do not use iPhone or do not use your phone and be engaged. But obviously, also, I want to make sure that we share that there's no recording of these sessions. This is really a safe environment, and the premise of this breakout is really to have trust, sharing, and to have those two emotions at the heart of everything. This is a great opportunity again to meet some of the community members and make new connections. So share and practice how to communicate and articulate your story. Obviously, if you don't want to talk, it's fine too. You don't have to. No one is forced. But it can be also a great opportunity to network and hear others' story and hear how others are talking about their story and advocating about colorectal cancer and advocating about their needs and themselves. You will have 30 minutes to go through this networking and sharing exercise. And again, it's an opportunity to have a virtual coffee because we cannot have a face-to-face one, unfortunately. So have a virtual coffee with people that are facing the similar situation and understand. I don't have my coffee. It's a bit later here, unfortunately. I should say that I'm in Belgium, so for me it's past coffee time. That being said, so everyone, on the left side of your screen, you should see a square with the mentioned breakout room. So you'll have to click on it to get to your breakout room automatically. And remember, before you leave, remember, you'll need to click again to come back. So don't remember to click again. But while you're in the breakout room, you're going to have reminders also of how much time is left for the discussion. So enjoy your time, leverage the fact that you're going to be in small groups of 10, 12 people, and enjoy the discussion and learning from each other. You can now click on the left button, breakout room, to get to your small group discussion and start sharing. We'll see you right after, all back in the plenary. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, Chana. I hope everyone enjoyed the session and felt a bit empowered by listening and sharing. I know that there's been, it seems that there's been issues with the breakout rooms. Unfortunately, some of them didn't work out, and I think there was a few people that had difficulty joining. So, again, I would still encourage you to continue using the framework. If you want, you can put in the chat your story of your challenge, what you chose, and the outcome. We'll try to also make sure that we have a look as we're continuing the discussion. That's the beauty of technology sometimes, unfortunately. So continue again, like I said, using the framework, story, and communicate, and gain confidence in telling your story and advocating for yourself. And as we continue, what we'd like to do, Hannah and I, is continue a bit kind of a discussion about that topic of self-advocacy. And Hannah, maybe to kickstart the discussion, you could share some of your perspective on how you've been yourself using that story of your challenge, your choice, and the outcome. I remember when we first met, you were you were so articulate in how you communicated that. And one thing you said really resonated with me, which was the fact that you need also to fine tune your story, depending on who you're talking to, obviously. I think that, again, it means that you need to be relevant to the person in front of you and adapt on how you would use this framework of challenge, choice, and outcome. So, but I know you share a story, especially about how you were communicating it with the healthcare professional and your doctor. So could you share with the audience some of your learning in doing that throughout your journey, and how you were communicating your story with healthcare professional and doctors, and where was a bit kind of the learning and how to do it?
Yeah, so, this is a really important part of sharing your story. The term know your audience always comes to mind. I think it's really important. You have to really know who you're talking to and how things are going to be perceived, because essentially you're going in there and trying to get them to see things from your perspective. And you have to know what will resonate with them. So, I personally was in a very privileged position at the time of my diagnosis. I know that sounds weird, but in the sense that I was, having worked many years as a medical social worker, I accompanied so many patients on their healthcare journeys. And, I was always mindful about how to present your story and experiences so they're heard, validated, and also in order for the necessary info to get out there so that you can get the help that you need. So when presenting to healthcare, when presenting your healthcare concerns, to medical professionals, it's really important to come prepared. So what I mean by that is, a few tips could be bring a list of your medications to appointments. That's really important. They'll be able to see the interactions, or maybe this is a side effect of this. So important to know what's going in your body. So along those same lines, concrete facts about your diet, lifestyle habits, smoking or low physical activity or major weight gains or losses. Also important to provide a list of, or come with a list of ongoing symptoms. So, frequency of these symptoms, severity of these symptoms. Medical professionals really want to have these qualitative and quantitative facts so that they can, understand it and potentially provide a diagnosis. So they also want to know how it's impacting your daily life. I'm unable to do this anymore, or I find myself going to the bathroom 300 times a day. I mean, this is all very important stuff to let them know. You have limited time with these health professionals, so be as efficient as possible. Go prepared. This is a difficult thing, but do your very best to keep the emotional expression at a minimum. Lean on your friends, your family, your peers for this kind of support. Talk things out before you go in to see the doctors, because otherwise it can be very overwhelming, and the focus, it may become the focal point, and that's not what you're there for.
Thank you. So there's a lot of, I see in what you're sharing, there's a lot of, again, a great list of what you need to bring. Obviously, how not to forget something. And I guess in that preparedness, was there going with someone, like, again, was there some of those, did you write it down? Did you bring it with in a written format to them? Is that some also going to that extent in terms of listing everything and being able to have it handy for you, or having someone with you?
So, yeah, I mean, that's obviously a challenge now with COVID. A lot of our patients are really suffering because they can't have family members there or friends. Sometimes you can do it by phone. That can be an option. You patch them in when you're in the office. It's always good to have a second set of ears and a second voice. I did learn, I learned from experience the first time I went in there, and I was a bit of an emotional mess, and it didn't go as planned. So when I finally did have the diagnosis, I actually had a friend of mine say, a colleague of mine, we work professionally together. So she knew as well how to speak to professionals, and said, you got to go in there prepared. Leave the emotions behind. We'll deal with them later, but go in there with questions. So when I did finally go to see my surgeon, for example, I had a list, like, a Christmas list long of questions, and I made sure that every question was answered. It really did help me. I noticed a major difference in his response to me the first time to the second time, for sure.
And I guess at the same time, there's also a lot of information you want to have, not only kind of in that interaction, but information in general of what you can do, what are some of support, what is some of the tips and readings you can do. Was that also part of your list when you got in?
So it wasn't. A lot of this stuff was sort of like, trial by fire, and then, learning how to do it better the next time. Initially, it's really overwhelming to have all these questions and to know where to go with all these questions. The easiest thing is to Google, but that can also be, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, not always so helpful. Yeah. So all I can say is really, write out the questions that you have at the time. Other questions will come. Write those down. It's an ongoing process of processing the information that's coming in, and then the questions will come to you, and poll your friends, like speak to. One thing that would have been really helpful is something like this, getting involved with the colorectal cancer community, which I didn't even know existed at the time, right? Particularly the early age onset. So I think, I really hope that that we're imparting that kind of empowerment to our patients today, the young ones especially, knowing that there is a community out there. Join groups, get people on board, ask questions.
And there is a community and different age. So again, what your message is also about the early age onset. So I hear a lot about that list going in. Unfortunately, with COVID, again, not being able to have someone, but maybe FaceTime them. Again, not being alone and being on facts a little bit more. If we look at self advocacy again, keeping the same theme, if you do it also, how did you communicate the same thing but more with your family and people that are again at the other extreme, I guess, of the emotion because they're close to you? So how did you do that? How were you able to advocate also with them in terms of your needs?
Yeah, so I mean, at 38 and having young children was a major challenge. I used the resources around me. Of course, the first people to know were my husband, my mom, my siblings, because this really gave me the foundation that I needed to feel, it takes a village. It really does. And so whether it's friends that are your major support or family, you need to really draw on that. So to tell them, I mean, sadly, my mom was with me at the time when I found this out. So we really were reeling and in shock together. And there was no shielding. It was the doctor who told us. So there was really no shielding. That's really what you want to do. Telling the children, obviously, like I said, major challenge. And so there are so many books and so much literature out there. Every care team, every oncology care team, usually, I hope every has a psychologist on staff, social workers who can help you, sit down with you, role play it if necessary. Organizations like ours provide that kind of support. Really, really important to approach it in a way that is comfortable for you. Your children the best. So that approach is very particular. All I can say is, really sort of gauge your audience. But when it comes to family and friends, they need to be there for you. They're your support. So as you said before, Dominique, you don't want to be that person who's not positive, and no one wants to see a cancer patient who's not positive, but that's the reality of the situation. Yeah. And we need to draw our strength from the people around us.
Yeah. And I love when you're sharing that, because it's about being yourself, being human, and being able to express your emotion a little bit, as we were discussing, which is not always easy. So maybe also, again, a little bit more in a summary manner, like what are some of for you, if you think about self-advocacy and then the difference of advocating with different groups, what are the main kind of roadblocks that you see in self-advocating that people need to be cautious and conscious about?
Well, so the first I would say is really the feelings aspect of it. When I think back to that first time that I went in all sort of like, this is so much and overwhelmed, the response from this particular doctor was almost like, okay, lady, calm down. And it was, I wasn't getting my point across because I was so, I was so rooted in the emotion of it all. So that's a major roadblock. I mean, we all have to speak the same language. And so, that's something that we try really hard to focus on at Colorectal Cancer Canada when we're working with patients is let's figure out a way for you to get your story across so that you're going to get the answers that you need. maximize your time with these professionals. So again, I would see that as a major roadblock. Another roadblock would be, I think right now specifically, it's COVID. COVID has been a major roadblock for everybody. It's slowed down the system. It's overworked the system. So we have to approach things even more so in a calm way, because otherwise it's like a runaway train. Sometimes also people put off their own health concerns, because of fear. I know I did for a long time, saying, it's okay that there's blood in my stool. That's not a big problem. I mean, right? Yeah, it was a major problem. So I think that sometimes we fool ourselves, and then when we get a response from a medical professional saying, "Oh, it's okay. It's just this or it's just that. It's your diet." Sometimes we're all too willing to listen to that because we're fearful. So I would say just continue. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Listen to your body.
Yeah, a little bit like in your story. So thank you so much, Chana. It's been really great to facilitate this session with you. I wish we were together, in fact, face to face, to be able to do that, but it was very humbling and great learning. So thank you to the audience. Also, we hope that you found this exercise and the tools a little bit useful, and that you feel a bit more empowered to be able to really tell your own story and advocate for yourself. And self-advocating is really by getting comfortable and communicating and each and every one's story. And as we continue doing that, do communicate as a community, we can raise awareness of colorectal cancer. So remember that speaking up and telling your story, in fact, can save lives. So thank you again, Chana. And now I invite all of you to stretch and move and relax with a 5-minute chair and mobility stretch yoga break that we're going to have with Annalyn Syntheraphone. She's a kinesiologist and cancer exercise and rehabilitation program coordinator at Hope & Co. So see you all after the 5-minute wellness break with Annalyn. Thank you.